Hello, hello, hello. All right, so welcome to today's video where I'm going to be talking about the present moment. Okay, so this is a topic that I feel very excited to talk about because I feel like, again, in the spirituality world, in the self-help world, in the spiritual growth world especially, we are told over and over and over and over and over again and over again that being in the present moment is where we should be. That learning to get ourselves to be here and now, to be in our present time, is one of the most important things that we could possibly do for our mental health, for our physical health, and then for our spiritual growth and for our spiritual understanding. And there's so much in many spiritual lineages about how, right, meditation techniques, yogic techniques, all these other kind of spiritual teachings that tell us that when we're in the present moment, we are our most powerful, we're our most awake and aware, we're our most spiritual. And there's even teachers out there nowadays who teach that when we are in the present moment, that when we bring ourselves into the present moment and that we're here, we're connected to what's actually happening, all this stuff, that there is no pain. Okay? That to be in the present moment means that we're connecting with reality for how it really is. And when we connect with reality for how it really is, there's never pain. That reality is perfect and we will see the perfection in everything, and that the root cause of all of our suffering and the root cause of all of our pain and the root cause of all of our trauma and drama in life comes from constantly living in the past or constantly living in the future, projecting ourselves into the future. And that I've even heard before that people have said, anxiety is constantly living in the future and depression is constantly living in the past. And so, again, there is so much out there that tells us that the most important thing we can possibly do for our health, for our spiritual growth, for anything that we want in life is to cultivate the capacity to be in the present moment. And what I want to talk about today is that a lot of us have realized, or at least, right, so first I think there's a lot of us have attempted to do the spiritual practices, to do the things that would help us get into the present moment. We have tried to be in the present moment. We have tried to move ourselves into being aware of what's actually happening right now and, like I say, just being present and trying to stop our thoughts and to stop our anxiety thoughts and stop thinking about the future and stop thinking about the past and to just be here in the moment. And we've tried all the techniques and we've done all the things that we've been told we need to do. And rather than feeling better, rather than finding that this actually supports us in our capacity to feel good and our capacity to feel grounded and to feel safe and to feel spiritual and all of these things, we either can't do it, right? That we are just constantly trying to be present, and it's not working. It's just really hard, and it just kind of seems like no matter how hard we try and no matter how many techniques we do and no matter how much we do all the things, we're finding ourselves constantly in the past and in the future, and we feel like failures because of that. We feel like we're doing something wrong, we must be failing spirituality in some way because peace is found in the present and we can't make ourselves be present. So there's that kind of lane that we can be in, the feeling bad about yourself that you've never been able to be present and make it stick. The second lane that we can be in is that we attempt really hard to be present, to be in the present moment, to do the only be here, only be now, and it doesn't feel good. It actually feels worse. It feels bad. We don't actually feel better. We feel more anxious, we feel more depressed, we feel more hopeless, we feel more trapped, we feel more stuck the more we try to make ourselves be present. And that's another very common experience that we can all have when we are attempting to be in the present moment, that it, like I say, we're being told over and over and over again that it's supposed to make everything better and that it's supposed to make all the pain go away, because when you're really in the present moment, reality is perfect and therefore you feel better. But we don't actually feel that way. That is not our experience. We come into the present moment and it feels like shit and we don't like it. A third experience can be that it actually feels dangerous to be in the present moment. Like, it literally feels like if we're not thinking about the past and if we're not trying to anticipate the future, if we're just trying to be in the present moment, that we're going to miss something and something's going to slip by us. We're going to do something wrong. We're not going to have seen something coming. We're going to repeat a past mistake because we weren't thinking about it. And it just feels like to try to be in the present moment means that we're setting ourselves up to harm ourselves or to be harmed. And like I say, so there's lots of reasons why we might have experienced the reality that being in the present moment doesn't make our pain go away, doesn't make everything perfect, and that it's not awesome. Okay, and then the fourth thing is that you may have experienced in yourself or witnessed in other people who are preaching the present moment teaching that there is a huge element of spiritual bypass that can be integrated into that, in the sense of, like, we can get into a place where we're saying, I'm going to try and be in the present moment so much that I'm saying, like, if literally my trauma or the abuse that happened to me or any of the things that have happened to me in the past aren't actually presently happening to me right here, right now, in this moment, it's not real. It's just a figment of my imagination. It's my past projection. It's my future projection. And therefore, it can't hurt me. And I should be able to be in perfect peace and perfect love pretty much at all times, because these things aren't actually happening right here, right now, in the moment. And that's my way of kind of, like I say, spiritually bypassing or process bypassing or feeling bypassing any of the things that happened to me before, or any of the things that I'm worried about in the future that are legit and an actual part of what's going on with me. It's a tool that we can use to just, like I say, not feel what we're feeling and to ignore the stuff that has happened to us and to just tell ourselves it doesn't matter and it's not real because it's not happening right now, and therefore it's not the present moment, and therefore it's not real, and so I don't have to feel it, I don't have to be in it, I'm just going to be in whatever is happening right here, right now, and that's the only thing that actually exists, and everything else is a figment of my imagination. And, like, some of us may have experienced in the spiritual world and the self-help world especially, that when we go to talk about our pain and we talk about our traumas and the things that have happened to us in the past, and we say, like, these things are hurting me and it's painful and I feel traumatized or I feel abused or I feel all of these things, spiritual people will tell us, well, you're doing this to yourself, right? Like the quote of, like, holding on to anger or resentment for someone is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die, or holding on to a painful emotion is like holding on to a hot coal when you could just let it go. And within these kind of like present moment teachings, there's this kind of underlying or overt teaching that, again, if you're in pain right now and there isn't actually something happening to you right now that is painful, like someone isn't abusing you currently or you are not currently in a situation, whatever, that, again, if you are in pain because of that, it's because you're focusing on it, and if you just focus on the present moment, that pain will go away, right? So again, kind of wrapping in that idea that if we're really present and if we're really in our present moment, we're going to discover that, like, most of our pain is just an illusion of our imagination. And so again, that can feel really invalidating, and that can feel really painful, and that can feel really like, okay, so again, you're telling me that all of my past experiences, that if they aren't happening right here, right now, they don't exist, and that if I have emotional pain left over from something that I have experienced that was painful, that the only reason it's painful now is because I'm thinking about it. Like, if I could just stop thinking about it and stop focusing on it, it would go away and stop hurting. And to me, I can, like I say, I can understand why people would want to believe this. I can understand why there would be this teaching in the spiritual world, that if you're just present in the present moment, in the here and now, and doing what is in front of you, and you're not projecting into the future and you're not projecting into the past, that everything is perfect. And again, we kind of have to start to recognize the patterns of these promises in the spirituality and self-help and personal growth world, right? The pattern of someone or something or a teaching coming up and saying, if you just do this one thing, it's going to remove all of your pain, right? If you just do this one thing, if you just do this one technique, if you just change yourself and your mental focus in this one very specific way, you will arrive at heaven and no pain will ever exist in you ever again. We have to start to recognize that when we hear things like that, that there may be elements of truth to what is being taught, because like again, I'm going to go into that. The present moment teachings and being in the present moment is not wrong, and it is helpful at times. But when we're being told that something is the panacea of all pain being removed, and if we just do this one thing, it's going to fix everything, that should be an alarm bell in all of our awarenesses that this is probably not reality, that this is probably an oversimplification of reality, that this is an oversimplification of what's actually happening, and there may be elements of truth to it, but it's probably not the whole truth, okay? And if you ever feel like you're being invalidated in your experience by a spiritual teaching or by a spiritual teacher, or like if you're being, okay, before I move on to that, right? I just want to say again that like it makes sense that sometimes we would be attracted to teachings that tell us this is the answer to all of your pain, and if you just do this one thing and if you just do it perfectly, it will fix everything for you. Like there is a huge, of course we're going to want to believe that, right? There are going to be people who, ourselves included, right, that when we hear stuff like that, we glom onto it and we want to believe that it's true. And then again, when it doesn't work, like when we attempt to try it and we do it and it maybe feels like a little bit better, or it feels good for a little while, or like the kind of newbie gains of starting something gives us a taste of peace, or a taste of what it actually does have to offer, we can conflate that and think, okay, so it was the answer. That is, it worked, it does work, it is working. And if then the effect starts to wear off, right? If so, I start practicing being in the present moment and it does feel better for a little bit, but then my pain starts to come back, my anxiety starts to come back, my depression starts to come back, all of these things. Instead of saying, okay, maybe the technique didn't work as well as they advertised, or maybe it's not as complete as they're saying that it should be, or, right, it's not the perfect thing. Most of us have that instinct to say, okay, well, I must just be doing it wrong. I must just be failing at doing it. I must just be, doing the technique incorrectly, or not using enough discipline, or I'm not strong enough or good enough, or I need to go to the next seminar, or I need another teaching, or I need another teacher, or I need another guru, or I got to buy the next course, right? Because I'm not doing it good enough, because like again, I had those initial good results that proved that this thing is right, plus my bias and my desire to believe that this thing was actually going to be everything that they promised that it would be. And right, a lot of the time the people, the gurus who are selling these things say like, I am perfectly happy, I have no pain anymore, I have transcended my human emotions, and it is because of this thing, so if you just do it too, you'll get the results that I'm getting, and look, I'm transcended, or whatever, right? Like we want to believe it, we're in pain, we don't know how else we're going to get out of pain. We don't want something complicated. We don't want something complex. We don't want steps. We don't want a thing we're going to have to figure out, of course, because when we're in pain and when we're struggling and when we're suffering, we want there to be an easy answer. We want there to be a perfect, easy answer that's going to deliver us into heaven. And like I say, it's just so easy to take what people are saying and to take the promises and to hear that it worked for them and that it's this perfect thing and it worked for their followers and all that stuff. And then, like I say, to turn on ourselves and to assume, okay, well, if the technique isn't working, if the thing isn't working, it's because of me and I just need to try harder, versus thinking, okay, maybe it's the technique, maybe the teaching isn't correct, maybe I'm being lied to a little bit or a lot. And again, this isn't even to say that teachers are necessarily nefarious. Some teachers, I think, are kind of fooling themselves. I think that there are a lot of teachers out there who are genuine and honest and believe what they're selling. And again, right, like, we all have our traumas, we all have our filters and our blind spots, and we all have our, again, we kind of have to remember that when we're looking at people who are teaching and we're looking at people who are having success selling a thing, sometimes their happiness is coming from their success. Like, it's not actually coming from the teaching. It's not actually because they did the thing they're saying they're doing, but they're having success. They have financial abundance. They're getting a bunch of validation from people. Like, they have something that's simple and therefore marketable, and people like it. And that could possibly be part of the reason why they're doing so much better now than they were before. They have a purpose. They have a meaning of life. You know what I'm saying? It can just be, we just have to use our discernment when we're looking at teachers and we're looking at teachings and they're telling us this is the perfect thing, and if you do it perfectly, it will be like this for you. And when it isn't, not immediately going into, well, I must be doing it wrong, and I must be failing at this in some way, and it must be something that I'm doing incorrectly, and starting to say, maybe it's not that at all. Like, maybe the teaching is good, but just not as complete as they're saying it is, whatever. So there's that element of it. We have to start to let the red flags come up, that if it feels like that kind of really excited, buzzy feeling when you hit on a teaching, and it feels like it's going to like be the answer, the thing that rescues you from pain for all the rest of your life, that can be a red flag for you, that it's like, okay, this is probably not the one answer that's going to be the everything for me for the rest of my life. It may be beneficial. I might want to try it on and get the benefits from it, because there could be some benefits, but like I say, having a bit of a skeptic's mindset when we take these teachings. And like I say, the biggest thing is having the capacity to question the teaching instead of questioning yourself. I think that is so huge in the self-help, spiritual growth, spirituality world, where we need to learn to say, like, it's a lot of the time these teachers and these teachings are preying upon or just really attracted to those of us who feel like we want to blame ourselves when things don't work, because that makes us feel empowered. It makes us feel like, I did find the answer. I have the thing that is going to fix me. I have found the solution. It is right. I don't have to go into thinking that I don't know what I'm going to do, or I don't know how I'm going to get out of pain, or I don't have to have doubt and fear in that anymore. I can feel like I have the answer, and it's just me, right? I just need to fix myself. I just need to adjust myself. And if I just do it right, and if I just do it good enough, it's going to work. So of course we want to believe that. And a lot of us have poor self-esteem, and we're just more inclined to blaming ourselves versus saying, okay, maybe, like I say, the promises aren't exactly as they are promised. And that is something that we need to take into consideration with all spiritual teachings that we take in, and all personal and self-help stuff. And then, so with the present moment, right, like, we want to look at this, and if we are feeling, again, like we are being invalidated, like we're being told that our feelings don't matter, or that our feelings are our fault, I'm giving you permission right here, right now, forever, for the rest of your life, to see that as a red flag. That, okay, hold on. If someone is telling me that my feelings are my fault, if someone is telling me that I could just adjust my attitude and I just won't feel this way anymore, and the fact that I am feeling this way is no longer because of what happened to me, or because I haven't been able to process it in a way that's allowed me to have catharsis, or because I'm still experiencing it on some level and haven't found some way to actually remedy it, and all these things. Instead of someone saying that, if they're saying, you can just let it go, you can just move on, you can just forgive and forget and all of these things. And the only reason you aren't is because you're just willfully choosing not to. I want you to know that this is not correct. That is not true. Okay, so someone says, thank you for this. I blame myself years as my life was still stagnant after reading tons of productivity books and still not where I hope to be. Exactly. And again, so much of that is because this spirituality and the self-help and this personal growth world, they don't actually teach us how to grow. They give us a bunch of spiritual platitudes, they give us a bunch of motivational speeches, they give us like all this stuff, and they don't recognize how our nervous systems work. They don't recognize how society is set up and systems of suppression and the things that can genuinely be holding people back. They don't recognize privilege. They don't recognize just all the varying ways in which we are not just holding ourselves back from having a negative mindset. Like, it's just, and again, I get it, because we want to believe the answer to feeling better and the answer to moving forward and all of these things is simple and something just that we can fix inside of ourselves, because that's the one thing we feel we have control over. But that's not reality for a lot of us. And like I say, moving forward, even if it is things that we are going to shift inside of ourselves, even if it is things that we are going to change inside of ourselves, we're not going to do it through feeling like shit about ourselves. Like, that is just antithetical to how the nervous system works. That is antithetical to how growth happens. We grow when we feel safe. We grow when we feel safe, and we feel safe when we feel loved, and we feel good enough, and we feel validated. So much of our pain is not because we're holding on to it. So much of our pain from the past, even if it's no longer happening and we should be able to just let it go and forgive, a lot of the time, the reason we're still feeling it is because we've never had the experience of being validated. We've never had the experience of just being like, yes, that was terrible. I'm so sorry you went through that. How are you feeling? Can you just express how you're feeling and express how it impacted you? And like I say, like, a lot of us have just never had that experience. A lot of us have never had the experience of saying, okay, how did that affect me and the way that I'm currently living my life, right? Like the programming, where we can literally get into a place where we're living our lives based on these faulty programs we were handed, based on the abuse and the trauma we experienced, because it changed our filter. It changed how we make decisions. It changed who and what we're attracted to, what we feel comfortable with, what we feel right about. And therefore, we continue to have these things in our lives that are painful, that do hurt. Yes, there's always so much more to the picture. There's painful that do hurt that we are continuing to do in our life today because of our programming, that we're not even seeing, like, I'm in pain. And it is the present moment. It is actually happening right here, right now. And I have to go back and process the pain of what happened to understand why that was painful and not okay, why that hurt me, and then how that affected me and is affecting my choices now, and then how I can love my nervous system safe enough to be able to start to make new and different choices where my nervous system isn't going to want to, because that's different, right? And my nervous system is stuck doing what it's always done because I feel afraid and I don't feel good because everything hurts. You see, it's a big thing. So like, just so many of these books and so many of these teachings are just like, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's not reality. It's not how we function. We are not just hurting ourselves for no reason, ever. We're not just, right? Like, all of us know when the way that we're living our life isn't awesome. Yeah? But like, we don't really need someone to say like, oh, you shouldn't be drinking, or you shouldn't be watching Netflix, or you shouldn't be scrolling your social media. Like, how many posts of that have you seen? And it's like, that does nothing for us, because it doesn't address why we're doing it. It doesn't address how the nervous system is programmed. It doesn't address how our brains work. And like, the fact that we're addicted to these things is not like a choice we're making, and all of that stuff. So there's that. So, and that kind of brings me to what I wanted to say about the present moment teachings. Okay, so if you're anything like me, when I first got into spirituality and present moment teachings, and I was told over and over again that come into the present moment, it'll take all your pain away, being present is the way, being present is the thing. My initial experience of that was like, this is absolute bullshit. I have no idea what anyone is talking about. Because, right, I'm someone who's chronically ill, so literally when I come into my body, when I come into my physical space, especially 10, 15, 20 years ago, like it's definitely less now, but like it in the past especially, coming into my body, coming into my present moment was excruciating. My body was in pain. My soul was in pain. My spirit was in pain. My emotions were in pain. The trauma of my life was happening to me. And like being in school or being in a work environment or being in public and all of this stuff and all of the things that I had on my to-do list and everything that was going on in my life, being in the present moment did not make me feel better. So that was the first thing. I was always just like, I have no idea what people are talking about when they're saying that being in the present moment brings them peace. Because in my experience, when I come into the present moment, it feels terrible. I don't want to be here. There's a reason I'm constantly thinking about the future or constantly thinking about the past, because that's better, right? Like I am someone who was constantly living in the future. Like so like planning absolutely everything down to the micromanagement of every single moment of my day for years. Every single minute of every single day of mine was completely, perfectly planned. There was one time where my dad and I, so like many, many years ago when I lived at home, my dad and I would go for groceries on Fridays, and I think we went at like 4:30 every Friday. And there was one Friday where he came and he was like, hey, hun, like, can we go for groceries at 5 today? I can't go at 4:30. And I literally sat there and like freaked out. I was like, no, right? Like I can't change my schedule for a half an hour. And that was how I'm going to label myself neurotic. I was in that. And I was, like I say, I was so future orientated that everything that I did and everything that was going on in my life, everything, like I was never in the present moment. Like, let's just put it that way. I was constantly 4 or 5 steps ahead, trying to predict what the next thing was going to be, what the next person was going to be doing. Like, I don't think I tasted food or like was in my body at all for probably like 10 years of my life, right? Like I know what it's like where life is so painful and things are so overwhelming that the only control you feel you have is to be constantly in the present moment or constantly in the future. And then also, like I say, like using that constantly thinking about the future as an escape mechanism, right? Like that's how I gave myself hope. So it was either I was keeping myself so busy that I didn't have to feel and I didn't have to be in the present moment and I didn't have to like so I had so much pain in my life that okay, I think we're back. Okay, so I had so much pain in my life that, like I say, being in the present moment was the worst feeling in the world. And so, like I say, I was using my constantly being in the future as a way of just distracting myself from feeling anything that was here. Being always 10, 15 steps ahead was how I didn't feel any of these things. And then the second thing was that's how I gave myself hope, right? So I'm either worrying about the future and anxietying about the future and stressing about the future, and that was keeping me distracted from feeling anything that was happening right now. And as funny as that can sound, that like worrying, which isn't a pleasant experience, can feel better than being in the present moment. Because again, we have to remember, when we're worrying about something, it hasn't happened yet, and therefore we still feel like we have some power over it. When we're worrying about something, we're trying to protect ourselves from any of the negative consequences that could happen. We're trying to give ourselves that power, yes, of how to, of being in control on some level. When we're worrying, we are trying to predict every possible outcome that could possibly happen so as to protect ourselves, so as to try to give ourselves the best chance of success that we can get, or whatever it is. And that is going to feel better and safer and more powerful a lot of the time than being in our present moment, where we feel like we don't have any power, where we feel like we can't do anything about what's actually happening right now. Like, so few of us feel like we can be in this moment and like that this is a good moment, or that we're safe in this moment. I just don't want to miss the comment. This is how I am, especially the timing factor. Anything off time or off schedule, I lose control and start to get overwhelmed. Absolutely. Because again, and I'm just speaking from my experience, right? That was how I was protecting myself. That's how I was trying to say, if I plan every moment of every single day, and if I have everything scheduled, bad things can't happen to me. And if I worry about everything, and if I think everything through, I'm going to protect myself from all of it, which is more power than I have in this moment where I can't change anything, right? So that's a huge part of it, of like, why do we have anxiety and why are we always off in the future? We're trying to protect ourselves. We're trying to eject ourselves from the present moment, where the present moment is painful and we don't know what to do about it. Or, like I say, the present moment might not actually be terrible right now. It could be that our present moment is totally safe and totally fine, but we don't feel that way, right? And this is a huge part of our programming and of trauma and of having repetitive experiences where we weren't safe, and we were told that we were, and we were told that it was fine, and we were gaslit. Like, because a lot of us we were like going to school or going to work or being in these normal situations at home, having a normal childhood, having normal household and all this stuff, and we were in pain, and it did not feel good, and we didn't feel safe. And yet everyone around us was acting like it was fine, and acting like it was okay, and acting like it was you that was the problem. It's your anxiety, it's your depression, it's your sickness, it's your whatever, that anything is wrong. But this is fine. And so again, a lot of us feel like, I don't want to be in the present moment, because the present moment does not feel good. I don't feel safe. I don't feel good. And I've never been validated in that. I've never been shown that when something feels bad but looks fine on the surface, that maybe it isn't fine, and that I feel that way for a reason. And so then I feel like a lot of us can get into our adulthoods and we just constantly feel not good, and we don't feel safe, and we're projecting sometimes that past experience of normal being so painful for us. And then we, like I say, we're constantly trying to figure out what we have to do and who we have to be, and what we scheming to try to be what everyone around us wants to be, or trying to protect ourselves, trying to predict what's going to happen, what other people are going to do, what we need, what's happening, and we can't. And then, like I say, then we get into the present moment as adults, where, like I say, maybe we do have power now, maybe things are different, maybe we are a little bit more safe, but it doesn't feel that way because now our nervous systems are wired for we're not safe. And then we're just constantly on the lookout, okay? So there's that factor. And then there's the depression factor, right? The being stuck in our past over and over again, just ruminating on things that happened in the past. Again, complete protective mechanism. We are trying to protect ourselves from that thing happening again. So either when we're not forgiving somebody, or we're constantly thinking about the abuses we've suffered, or the things that we've been through that were hurtful and painful and traumatizing, again, so much of the time, we just have never been validated in that. We've never been given the opportunity to actually process that. It might be over now. Maybe it's never happened again. Maybe that person isn't in your life, any of that stuff. However, you may not have been, like I say, given a container, given the proper just capacity to process that, to have felt that and been like, yeah, that sucked, and that really hurt, and it hurt for this reason, and this is why I didn't like it, and this is why it was painful, and then maybe this is what I learned I don't want to accept in future relationships, or maybe it showed me something that I was limiting believing about myself, and it really enforced that. And now I still believe that, and I still think that, right? Like we're still ruminating on something because it affected us. It affected the way we see ourselves. It affected the way we see the world around us. And it's affecting the way that we're currently living, the way that we're currently making our choices, and we don't see that. So sometimes we do have to go back to the past to process that, why what happened to us was so painful, get validated, get awareness about that, and then we can start to see, okay, and it's how it's affecting me now. So it says, yeah, it's how I feel. Depression is about ruminating, and anxiety, panic attacks about the future, and present is pain and uncertainty. Exactly. Okay? So that's like when we're ruminating on the past, we can be, because we got hurt by something, we didn't get to process it, it's still affecting us. It can be, again, we're trying to keep it in our minds and to keep aware of it so that we can protect ourselves from it happening to us again in the future, right? When we refuse to forgive somebody, when we can't let something go, it's because we don't feel safe. We don't feel like we could handle it if that happens again, and we're trying to protect ourselves from that happening again by constantly thinking about it. We're keeping ourselves on alert for this thing that really hurt and that we don't want to have to experience again, and we're trying to protect ourselves from it. Yes? Or we're trying to, like when we're thinking a lot about our own mistakes and the things that we did wrong and the things that we feel were the things that were bad and made people upset with us, or all of these things, again, self-protection. We are trying to continually remind ourselves of the mistakes that we made to try to protect ourselves from future pain. Right? So that is why we ruminate on the past. That is why we go into the future. We're trying to protect ourselves from pain. We're trying to be on top of stuff that happened to us that we didn't process, and we're trying to eject ourselves from this present moment where we don't feel good. So, first things first, when the spirituality world tells you that coming into the present moment should make you feel good because the present moment is amazing and there's no such thing as real pain in the present moment, that is a lie. If you in the present moment have just cut yourself with a knife and then 10 seconds later you're not cutting yourself with a knife anymore, does that mean the pain goes away? Right? If you fall out of a 10-story building, the moment you hit the ground, you break all your bones. The next second, is there still pain? Because you're not falling now. You're just on the ground. You're just laying on the ground. Right? Like, of course there's still pain, because there's still injury. And that's the thing. We bring our past into our present all the time. None of us are just blank slates every second. It's a completely, when you kind of break down the teaching and really question it for what it's saying, it's nonsensical in a lot of ways. Yes. Okay, so this, right? What happened to us has affected us. There is no such thing as going through an experience. There is no such thing as going through an experience and having it have no impact on you. Everything has impacted you. Everything has informed you. And when we go through painful experiences where we didn't feel like we had control, and where we don't feel like we have control, and where we're in pain right now that we don't know how to fix, and when we have, like I say, future pain we're predicting based on past pain, because again, no one just becomes anxious for no reason. No one just becomes worried about what's going to happen in the future for no reason. We are doing that because we have been repeatedly shown, or in some maybe acute situation, shown that we were not safe, that life wasn't okay, that we didn't have control, that we didn't know how to protect ourselves. And we're trying to protect ourselves now. We're doing the best we can with what we know to protect ourselves. So I just really want to say, right, the thing that a lot of spiritual teachers will not admit and will not look at and will not talk about is, number one, there is pain in this reality. There is absolutely painful experiences. There are tragedies in life, and I get it, right? We want to believe that we chose our life path and that everything happens for a reason, and that anything that happens has a silver lining and a blessing and all of that stuff. And if that is what you believe, and if that feels good to you, and if you are someone who works with that, go for it, okay? I'm not saying don't believe that. I'm not saying that isn't true. But what I am saying is that it's not always going to feel that way. Even if you want to believe that, it's not always going to feel like that. And for so many of us, we do not believe that. And being told that we are supposed to be okay with absolutely everything and see the silver lining in everything and everything has a purpose and everything has a meaning doesn't make us feel better, because we just need to be validated that that thing I went through sucks. That thing I went through really hurt. I didn't have control over it. And now I'm afraid it's going to happen again. And I don't see a positive benefit in it. I don't see a lesson in it. I just see pain. And I just want to validate you. That is okay. That is human, right? We are all here on this planet having an existential crisis because we are life that is self-aware. We have evolved to become self-aware, but we are not evolved enough to know what happens after we die. We are not evolved enough to completely protect ourselves from absolutely anything that could threaten our survival. Our capacity to have happiness, our capacity to have the things that we want. We don't have that. We are beings who can experience pain, who can experience death and loss and tragedy. And we can experience that and we can understand it and we can see it, but we can't control it and we can't explain it. And so, of course, for all of human history, we've come up with lots of explanations, right? Every religion, every spiritual lineage, every explanation for what happens after we die or why tragedies occur or any of these things is humans' best guesses, yeah? Or literally shit we're just making up because it feels good. But no one can promise you of what's going to happen to you after you die. No one can promise you that your life is going to go this specific way and all of these things are going to happen to you. Even if that is reality, right? Like, it could be. It could totally be that everything is pre-planned and everything is predestined and we're literally just in a simulation walking it out. But we don't know that. And we can't prove that. So at the end of the day, all of us are going to, no matter how strong we are in our faith, no matter how many experiences we've had that have proven to us that everything happens for a reason, that we're guided and we're protected and all of these things, there are going to be days and times and weeks where we don't feel like that. And things just feel scary and things feel out of control and we don't feel protected and we don't feel loved. And some of us never feel that way. Some of us just don't feel like we're guided and we're protected and we're loved by the universe and that we're safe and that that there's a God who's planned all of this or that we were intentionally designed or any of these things. And so like I say, I'm not invalidating the people who do believe that. And if that really speaks to you, go for it. And like I said, I've had experiences in my life that I can't explain, that aren't just like normal stuff, and that make me say, well, maybe there is some spiritual thing that's happening, but I don't want to project that onto anybody because, again, I also have existential crises sometimes because, right, I'm chronically ill. I'm like more aware of my mortality than most people and more aware that maybe I never will heal myself and I will just be in pain for the rest of my life, or that there are some things that I might just never be able to do because I physically can't do them. And there are some days where I don't want to hear like that has a purpose and all that. Some days I'm just like, no, like this just fucking sucks and I hate it. And I'm sad and I'm broken about it. And that's okay. So like I said, being in the present moment is not going to make all your pain go away. In fact, what I believe and what I have experienced is that when we come into the present moment for real, two things can happen. Okay? Number one, where this can be useful, okay, where coming into the present moment can be useful is when we are absolutely, truly caught up in worrying about the future, worrying about the future, or ruminating on the past, and it starts to feel like those things are happening right now, right? When we start to get into that place, and this is really difficult to identify in the self, okay? So this is why, okay, I'm going to get into this in a little bit, like near the end. I'm going to talk more about like how to use this practice for practical purposes. But we do have to remember, right, that we are storytelling beings, right? We make up stuff all the time. And a lot of the time, our imaginations of what we want to create in the future, our capacity to literally dream up things that do not exist and that have never existed, and that we can like feel them and see them and visualize them and like work towards them as though it's obvious that that thing is going to be created even though it's never happened to us before. Like that capacity to be able to do that is what makes us so amazing in terms of life on this planet and what we can do. Like the fact that we can literally believe our own stories to the point where we can like manifest them, like literally, and I don't even mean that in like make things come to you, but like you can manifest a website that has never existed before purely from conjuring it up in your mind, right? Like you invent the idea, you connect with the technology, you learn all these skills, you learn all these tools, and then you make a thing that never existed before. And that's incredible. And it's because you believed your own story. You believed your own story so much that you made it come true. You literally created it. And so there are things in life where we are telling ourselves these stories, and we believe what we are thinking so much, and it seems so true, that we can't tell the difference between a thing we're inventing in our minds and a thing that's actually happening, right? So when we're in like constant anxiety about our body and our physical sensations and like what's happening, and we're constantly worrying about what could happen, what could happen, what could happen, what could happen, to tell someone in that state, just come into the present moment, you'll be fine, is not the whole picture, okay? But someone in that state can absolutely benefit from learning something like orientation. So the listing 5 things you see, 4 things you feel, 3 things you hear, 2 things you smell, 1 thing you can taste, and then I like to add on to that, taking into account 4 or 5 things that are actually going well in your reality right now. Because a lot of the time, our pain still exists right now. It is there. We are worried about a future. We are worried about the past. These things have happened. But in this actual moment where we are right here, right now, these things are not happening. Yes? And we can find that we are a little bit safer than we might think that we are. Okay, so that's the first thing. The present moment teachings can help us. And again, this is something that I want to say for a lot of us, we need to practice before we're really going to get good at it. As in, before we're going to be able to say, I can do my orientation practice and it makes me feel a little bit calmer because it helps me to see, okay, yeah, the stuff that I'm worrying about might happen and the stuff that I've been thinking about did happen, but it isn't happening right now. And that I am a little bit more safe in this moment than I thought that I was, okay? And then the second thing is, where I really think that the present moment teachings can be helpful is that they can help us to, prioritize what is actually pertinent in our moments, okay? So when we're worrying about the past and we're worrying about the future, a lot of the time, what we are doing to try to protect ourselves, to try to anticipate future pain, just like what we talked about, that's really why we're doing it. We're trying to anticipate pain. We're trying to protect ourselves from something that happened. We're trying to process something we never got to process. That's why we're doing that. And the answer is, it's not that coming into the present moment is going to just magically fix all that stuff. It's not that when you come into the present moment, none of that stuff exists and everything goes away. But what does happen when we can truly draw ourselves into the present moment, we may still feel pain. We may still feel panic. We may still be in a situation we don't like. We may still have things we want to predict what's going to happen and all that stuff. But what we will find in the present moment is that we can start to prioritize what we can actually do about something right here, right now. And this is what I think can give us what the present moment teachings can give us, is that so much of the time, again, we don't spend any time in the present moment because we don't know how to deal with the present moment. Like, that's what's really going on. We don't know how to deal with what is happening in front of us right now. We're in the past and we're in the future because that is hypothetical, technically. Right? We can think about all the things we could have done differently, and if that happens again, I can do it like this, and right? Or, like I say, we're worrying about the future, constantly about the future, so that we're telling ourselves it's going to be better eventually. I'm going to get to a place where it's better eventually. If I just keep thinking about the future, and I just keep projecting into the future, I'm going to make my life better in some way. But we never, or like I say, or we're trying to predict it all so that we can protect ourselves, but we're never here in the moment doing what we can about the moment. And that is part of why, like I say, a lot of us struggle and suffer and aren't able to make our lives better in the ways that we could make our lives better, because we don't know how to find our power right now. No one ever taught us how to be here where we are and figure out what we can do about this. Okay, so I think that that's why the present moment teachings are only half of a teaching. Because yes, coming into the present moment can sometimes, like I say, when we're really in story and when we're really overwhelmed and we're really just running our wheels on a thing that isn't really happening and we really are kind of more safe right now, coming into the present moment can be very powerful in that we can realize, okay, that stuff isn't happening. I am more safe right now than I thought I was, and I don't really have to do anything right now. It's okay. If I can just ground into this, and like I say, when we have traumatized nervous systems, and when a lot of us have experienced a lot of unpredictability and being unsafe and have been in a lot of pain, that's not going to feel good right away. That's something we practice over and over and over again. We orient, we come into our moment, and we try to find where we are okay. And we're just trying to get the nervous system to see that we're not under attack right now. You see, that's the part of it. But the second half that makes the present moment teachings useful, if they're going to be useful, is that they bring us into the awareness of what is happening right now. So then if there is pain right now, if there is worry about a thing that's coming up, if there is, like I say, we're thinking about what happened before, then we can start to ask ourselves, okay, in this moment, what can I do about it? And I feel like when we really start to allow ourselves to ask ourselves that question, right? Yes, there is pain right now. Yes, there is fear right now. Yes, there are things that I don't like and that I don't want right now. First thing, we don't gaslight ourselves and we validate ourselves that stuff exists and that we don't feel good. There's pain in my body, there's pain in my emotions, there's pain in my relationships. I'm not happy about what's happening right now. And then we can acknowledge the fear we have about, I don't know how to do anything with this, right? I don't know how to fix this. The reason I'm in the past and the reason I want to be in the future is because I don't know what to do about this. And like I say, most of us were never taught how to problem solve, to identify the needs we have right now, and to make progress, right? So sometimes coming into the present moment means we have to let go of the idea that there is a thing that's going to make our whole lives better. And we start to say, okay, the real truth is I'm going to take little steps every day from my present moment to process my pain, to deal with what I can deal with in this moment. And we start to empower ourselves, okay? Because so much of the time, like I say, when we're off in the future and we're off in the past, we're not empowering ourselves to take the steps that are right here, right now in front of us, that will make us feel more in control. Because again, we will validate we're not in complete control. Life isn't completely in our control. And that existential crisis is a part of being human. And I just want to really validate that. And that is normal. And that's why we have all these spiritual teachings and these spiritual techniques and these support groups and self-love and all that stuff, because it's scary being a human. And I don't know that I can give you a tool to make that go away, because I haven't made that go away. But I can give you tools to help you work through it, right? These self-love tools of getting on your own side and making yourself your own safe space and all that stuff doesn't take away all the pain of life. It doesn't heal everything. It doesn't fix everything. But what it does do is it can give you that sense of being loved and cared for and supported, which does deactivate your nervous system. It brings you closer to this moment. And then that is where your actual power is. And so what we have to understand is that in our present moment, we don't always have ultimate control. We don't have ultimate power. We can't make all the pain go away. We can't always fix everything. But what we can do, like I say, the more we practice being in the present moment, the more we will start to say, okay, what can I do in this moment? So if there's something that I'm worrying about in the future, is there an actual action step I can take right here, right now, to set myself up for that? So I'm not just thinking. Is there something I can actually do that's making me say, okay, I'm preparing myself? If we're in pain right now, can we just say, okay, where's the pain? What is this pain? Can we process the fear, right? A lot of us, the physical pain, it's like, I don't know why it's happening. It's going to mean all these things. I'm going to die. I'm going to be in pain forever. All that stuff. We let that come up. We love ourselves through that. And then we say, okay, is there anything I can actually physically do for myself right here, right now, today? Is there a step I can take that will make me feel just a little bit better? And if not, can I validate myself in that experience? Instead of checking out and running away from it, can I give myself just 2 or 3 minutes to just feel and grieve about how much I am upset that I am in pain? And I'm not going to make it about the future, and I'm not going to make it about I'm just going to make it right here, right now. I'm in pain right now, and I don't want to be in pain right now. And I validate that in myself. If we're not forgiving someone, and we're in pain about something that happened, come into this moment and say, okay, right now I'm upset about it. And here's why it upset me. Here's how it hurt me. And maybe here's how I'm blaming myself for it. Here are all the ways that I'm telling myself I shouldn't have done that and all these. And can I just get on my own side about it for 5 seconds? And I mean that, like 5 seconds, 10 seconds. We start to come into, and like I said, right, and sometimes even more practical than that. Do I have a thing that I can do on my to-do list today that I can just do right now? Like even if it's half a thing, that just makes me feel like, okay, I did something in the present moment for my future self. I did have some power. Maybe we can contemplate having the conversation we need to have that we're not brave enough to have right now. Maybe we can contemplate buying the groceries or whatever. You see what I'm saying? That when we come into our present moment, it's not going to make everything go away. It's not going to fix everything magically. But the more we practice coming into the present moment, the more we can say, okay, where is my power right now? What can I do about the things that I am worried about? Is there an actual empowered action step I can take? And if it's just there's some pain in my life right now, can I process that a little bit? Can I show up for it? Can I call a friend who's just willing to listen? Can I journal? Can I just validate myself that I feel this way and it's okay? Because so much of the time, the running from our pain, we're not even necessarily running from the pain itself. We're running from what we think the pain means, right? If I feel my pain, I'll be in pain forever. If I feel my pain, I'm a bad spiritual person and I shouldn't be doing that. Pain automatically triggers us into shame and guilt and how it was our own fault, right? We don't know how to process pain. And so the pain just keeps following us and following us and following us. And we keep running and running and running. Because it's not even just the pain. It's not just the pain that's hurting. The pain itself is bad and can be very uncomfortable, But a lot of the time, like I've learned this for myself, that learning how to just sit and feel my pain and not make up a story about how it's going to be a forever or all of that stuff, but just feeling it. It's never as bad as I thought it was going to be. The pain, it's still pain. It doesn't feel good. But it's never as terrible as I thought it was going to be. And allowing myself to feel it makes me so much less afraid of it. And then I don't feel like I have to be running all the time and distracting myself all the time, right? Because I'm still someone who has physical pain in my body. So I do have the instinct to just run, plan, be productive, don't feel it. And I practice every single day just being with my body. And some days it feels great, and some days it feels like pain. And just learning how to be less and less afraid of it has made it so that I can be more in my present moment and say, okay, what can I actually do about this right now? So again, being in the present moment doesn't mean we're just like floating on air now. No. The more we can be in our present moment, the more we can say, okay, there may be actions I can take right now that will help me feel a little bit better. It's not going to fix my whole life. It's not going to do absolutely everything for me. But when I come into my present moment, I can be aware of what's actually happening and where I have the capacity to take a step to help myself. And then that is what makes us actually feel more empowered. It makes us less afraid of the present moment. And we have to practice it over and over and over again. And it makes us more aware of what's actually happening in this moment. Because again, a lot of the time, so many of us have our stories that we don't know our stories. We don't know that we're in projection. It feels very real to us that someone is upset with us. Or that if I do this thing, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. And we're literally living as though all those things have already happened. But they haven't happened. And we kind of have to almost be like, whoa, okay, that didn't happen. That didn't actually happen. I didn't actually take that action. That I'm not being kicked out of my apartment right now. I don't have no money in my bank account. Like sometimes we literally have to say, wait, do I still have the job? Okay. Am I being kicked out of my apartment right now? No. And am I dying right now? No. And sometimes we really do have to bring ourselves to that degree of like, I get that I'm afraid of it. I get that I'm trying to predict it. I get that I'm trying to protect myself from it. But it's not actually happening right now. And my best chance at actually protecting myself from it is being in this moment and doing the practical things in this moment that will help me not get there. So that's part of it, is that when we come into our present moment, we will find where our power actually is. And we will feel less out of control. When we can just continue to ask ourselves, what can I do right now? What steps can I take? What is available to me in this moment? And sometimes we don't know what that answer is, and we have to just let ourselves panic and then be on our own side. That's why the same tools of compassion for yourself and curiosity. This is it, over and over and over again. Not because that solves all of your problems and makes all your pain go away, but because that's our foundation. We always start with that compassion for yourself and curiosity about what's going on, what you're feeling, why you're feeling what you're feeling. And the more we do that, like I say, the more we're going to be able to be in the moment and be like, okay, I can have that conversation right now. I can drink this juice right now. I can cry about this thing and process it a little bit right now and stop blaming myself just for 5 minutes. Because again, sometimes it's not going to feel safe to say we're going to stop blaming ourselves. Because if we're saying, if I don't keep blaming myself, I'll do terrible things again in the future and get hurt and everything's going to fall apart. Okay. Just for 5 minutes, you're just not going to blame yourself. And you're just going to love who you are right now, and then you can go back to blaming yourself. You see what I'm saying here? Coming into the present moment helps us to just be aware of the scary stuff that isn't actually happening right now. And we practice that over and over and over again. And then the pain that is here in this moment, the fears that are here in this moment, the to-do lists that are here in this moment, the power we actually have in our lives is right here, right now. And so we can just start to ask ourselves, how can I empower myself just a little bit by just taking whatever step is currently in front of me? And then I can go back to worry worrying, right? Like, don't take the tool away from yourself. Anxiety about the future, ruminating on the past, feelings, all these things, you're not just making it up. You're not just doing it for no reason. It's how you're trying to protect yourself right now. So do not take those tools away from yourself. We practice being in the present moment. We practice taking the 1 or 2 little steps we can take, and we prove to ourselves that this works. And then we will just naturally start to worry less because we will say, okay, well, it felt actually better to be in the moment and to do what I can about the moment. That feels more empowering than worrying or ruminating. And when we're validating our emotions and we're validating what we've been through, we don't have to force ourselves to try to forgive, and we don't have to force ourselves to try to feel better about things we don't feel better about. We will actually process and eventually, like I say, change our lives in some ways, heal in some ways, cut people out of our lives, change how we're doing things, and we will naturally feel better when we're not being harmed anymore. That's how that works. If it still hurts, there's still something to learn. You're not just holding on to it. So come into the moment, acknowledge what's here in this moment, and then what's the one step you can take? What's the one thing you can do? And even if that's just holding yourself and being upset about what is, and not trying to make yourself feel different about it, that's an empowering thing. Okay? So that's my idea of the present moment. I hope that was helpful. I hope that gave some tools. And again, it's not about never planning for the future and never thinking about the past. I don't think that's reasonable. I don't think that's possible as a human being. It's just sometimes we can come into the present moment and allow ourselves to see where our power actually is and what we really can do about what's going on in our lives. And then we make ourselves feel a little bit more empowered when we do that. And the more empowered we feel to problem solve in our own lives one step at a time, the less out of control we're going to feel, the less we will need to be in the future and the past. Okay? So it's not about forcing yourself to be in the present moment and thinking it's going to heal everything. It's about where is your power and what can you do about your life right now. And then when you are done that and you've done what you can do, you love yourself. You make yourself safe. You cope, you numb, you stimulate, whatever you do. You make all of that okay, because that's how it's going to be. It's not going to be I learned how to be in the present moment, I found my power, and now I'm good now. Right? We make it safe. Get on your own side. Everything you're doing has a positive intention. Keep being compassionate and curious. Okay? All right. So that's that. Hope that was helpful. And if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. And I will see you in the next video. All my love.